Hello again, tiny house people. I'm back in my basement again with another product review. This one's going to be done in segments. I usually do my video reviews all at once when the product is done or the project is finished. But in this case I'm going to do this one in pieces. This is the Pacific Sky Power wind generator. I've had this for quite a while. I just haven't done anything with it yet, and I'm going to be addressing this here shortly. This is just a tiny wind generator. Not much more than a little DC motor and a large prop for wind generation. This thing will not provide a lot of electricity. You really need to mount these in series, so you might want to have several of them together to provide a workable output. But I went ahead and bought just one of them anyway. I read a review on Amazon.com for this gadget, and there was one negative review on there, and the reviewer actually was chuckling about it, and they said that this thing really isn't good for much of anything except trickle charging a battery. And it was actually that negative review that convinced me to buy this. I got it on eBay, not hard to find. This thing won't provide one wind generator alone. Like this will not provide very much electricity. Just enough to trickle charge a battery. Now the lead acid battery in my Duracell power pack is subject to sulfation because it is a lead acid battery. So to prevent sulfation and keep it topped off when the sun is not shining, I thought it might be nice to have a little wind generator. I don't have a problem with wind generators. I'm not a big fan of them. I'm certainly not against them, but in this situation, I think it'll help keep my battery active, help keep the plates from sulfating. Sulfating is really bad for batteries, and this will just provide a consistent, or hopefully a more consistent trickle charge than the solar panel alone. Now I really want to rely on the solar panel and the pedal charger, the pedal-a-watt that you can see in another review, as my primary sources of electricity. Like I said, it'd be nice to have a little trickle charge when the sun's not shining, or at nighttime when I'm sleeping and I'm not going to be up pedal charging. This will provide a little trickle charge. What I'm going to do is build a tower for it, and that'll be covered in an update video, so that it will pivot to face the wind. So I'm a long way from having that done. There are several videos out there, I know a couple of them anyway, that are cover that project too. A couple people have bought this wind generator and have built a tower for it, and most likely I will be looking at their plans, and I might be even copying them, so we'll see how it goes. But this is a project that I'm going to be covering incrementally, so I'll be back with further videos to update the project as it goes along. But I'm going to build a tower for it, one that will pivot to face the sun, or excuse me, to face the wind, and the cords will of course run down the tower to a cigarette lighter plug, and I'll simply plug it into the side of my Duracell power pack, and no controller is needed because it's not providing enough of a current to need a charge controller. If I had more wind generators strung together, I would need a charge controller, but just one doesn't require it. Batteries, lead acid any battery really has the ability to regulate some voltage on its own. It has a tendency to even voltage out, so it doesn't really need a charge controller. But at any rate, the most I've done with this thing so far is taken it outside and held it in the wind to test the current on a voltmeter, and it works great. Doesn't take a whole lot of wind to get it going. It's a pretty cool little wind generator. Like I said, it's not much more than a DC motor and a prop. I could have built it myself, and sometimes I'll build things. I'm happy to build things myself. Case in point, the tiny house itself. But some of these things I just don't have the time or the energy to take on as a do-it-myself project. So I bought this. But I will be back to cover this project as it progresses. But for the time being, I can say this is a pretty nifty little gadget. I found it on eBay, not hard to find, just, eBay search Pacific Sky Power. And if you're considering something like this, I'd have to say it's pretty cool so far, but we'll see how the whole project works out in the long run. But that's my quick review, and I will be back with updates as the project progresses. Okay, YouTubers, I'm back with an update. I've decided to move forward on this tiny wind turbine project of mine. I found an old piece of wood. A fella I know had several planks that he took out of a house that he was demolishing and set me up with several of them. I decided I'm going to make a wind vane. And this is how I'm going to do it. You see the blue lines on the board. Everything inside the blue lines will be cut out, including this notch here. That will be gone. And then the wind generator will sit on there. Actually, it won't sit on there once this notch is gone. It will sit somewhere in there, like that. So I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to set down the camera when I do that. I'll use a jigsaw. I'm in my basement again. I don't have a workbench here in the place I'm living. So I'm going to do this with a jigsaw and vacuum up the mess it makes, and I'll come back when I'm done. And then I'm going to take that piece of wood and I'm going to shape it with my hands. I enjoy wood carving and wood shaping and things like that. And I'll get a little artistic with it and have some fun with it. Right now it's about 1 foot 7 inches long. Then I'm going to take another piece of wood. Probably won't use this one because it's got, screw holes in it. But at any rate, I'll get another piece of wood and I will make a fin for it, which will mount on here. It'll come up and go back, and it'll actually extend further back than this distance. It'll be mounted somewhere on here, come up, and it'll go back further. And I'll try to make it all artistic and cool looking best I can. I will seal it with some kind of protectant to keep the elements from destroying it. It's wood, so obviously it's going to eventually rot away. But I'll make it last as long as I can. And I'm really looking forward to this one because I enjoy working with my hands and shaping, wood projects like this. So I'm going to set the camera down. I'm going to go get a jigsaw. I'm going to cut this out, and I will be back when I'm done with that. Okay, I just made the first cut using this old jigsaw that my father had in the family since about 1973. And here it is. Not impressive, but now comes the fun part. I get to shape it with my hands, and that's the part that I enjoy the most. So I will be back with my progress here in a little while, after I've cleaned up the sawdust and this mess that I made. And I'll let you know what's going on. Stay tuned. Okay, the first few segments of the video were done yesterday. It's the next day now, and this is the current state of progress. It's coming along quite nicely. It is not even at all, especially if you look down the end here. So a lot more sanding needs to be done. It does not have to be perfect because it's going to be mounted on the tiny house. It'll be up in the air. Nobody's going to get up there to look for imperfections. But I do the best I can with it. I'm going to take it to work with me tonight, and when I get some breaks at work, I will continue to sand on it, get it nice and smooth, and then tomorrow I'm going to cut the fin, which will go on here. And I've just been sitting down here in front of the TV. I'm watching Bar Rescue right now, and I sand over this paper bag to try to collect most of the dust. And that's coming along pretty well. So I will check in with you in the next segment. Okay, it's been another day, and I'm ready to move along. Excuse me. This part of the project has come out very nicely. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. So that's good. Now yesterday, I made this fin out of an old piece of plywood. I try to do this with scrap lumber as much as I can. And I'm going to mount it on the back like this. And to do that, I'm going to draw a line down the center and carve a notch in the wood that the plywood will slip into. It'd be nice if I had a wood shop. This project would go a lot faster, but I don't have. And I enjoy taking my time and working with my hands anyway, so it gives me something to do until I actually get the tiny house built. But I will come back in a little while. It's been another day, so this is going over the course of several days. It probably just looks like one video clip after another to you, but it's been stretched out over a few days. I'll come back after I start, after I get the hole, the notch carved into the wood. The notch is a little crooked, as you can see, but it's not going to affect the performance of this wind vane. I'm going to drill a few holes so I can screw the fin in from underneath, and then I'm going to put some glue in the groove and assemble it. You can see I filled it in with some epoxy. That's JB Weld. Stuff works great. It's really strong. So it's coming along nicely. Next I'll be painting it and sealing it, because the weather will erode this thing pretty quickly. So I have to make sure it's properly sealed. I also got a little hole here in the epoxy. I have to fill that in with something so water doesn't get in there. But it's coming along really well. Okay, I trimmed the fin down because I thought that it was a bit too heavy. I want it to be lightweight in the back so that the wind can spin it around easy. So I'm going to take it to work with me tonight, and I'm going to sand it down, smooth it out, and then I'll probably move on to the painting, and I'll be back. Okay, I drilled a couple of holes in it to make the fin a little lighter. I was going to put a third hole in there somewhere in the area of my thumb, but decided that 2 was enough. coming along very nicely. Okay, the first layer of primer has been sprayed on. It's not perfect, there's some imperfections in it, but don't really make any difference to me. Okay, next I'm going to start painting it white. Okay, I got a couple coats of white paint. It's looking pretty good. There's some imperfections in here, as you can see. Nothing that I'm worried about. Like I said in a previous segment, nobody's going to get up on the top of the post and look at the wind generator for imperfections, so it should be fine. It needs another coat because there's some bald spots here and here. But for the most part, I'd say it's looking pretty good. I used white paint because I happen to have a can of it around. I didn't have to buy another one. I'm trying to do this on a shoestring budget, just to save money and partially for fun. See if I can make it with scraps. I'll probably get one more coat of white paint, and then I will move on to the next segment. Alright, it's coming along very nicely. Should have enough paint on it by now. There are some imperfections, like I said, but I don't care that much. I just really don't care too much about that. So it's looking pretty good. I got the motor in. I need to add a screw here and here. I will do that later. I will add a stainless steel screw so that they don't rust in the rain. And there will be a slight pause here before I move on to the tower portion of the project. So I'm going to post my video progress up till now, and then I'm going to move forward with the next part of the project, and I'll be posting that at a later time. So let me know what you think. Okay, little update here. I put in a screw here and here. My intention was to put galvanized screws in, but I don't know if these are galvanized. A couple of brass decorative screws I found someplace. Trying to do this on a shoestring budget, like I mentioned before. Now I'm on to the next step, which will be, hi little dog, which will be to mount this turntable onto the wind generator, or to the vane anyway. I got this at a woodworking store for about $3. It was really cheap, but I want to protect it from the rain. The rain will rust this thing. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna loosen this screw and put it back in through one of these holes, and then mount the other one. Screw that one down too, centered. Now what I've discovered is that the balance point is just behind this point here. So if I balance it on my finger, it'll balance somewhere right in that area. Not a very scientific method of measuring, I realize, but it's good enough for this project. So I'm going to mount the turntable right at the balance point, as close as I can get to it, and it comes out just about perfect if I screw it down through this hole that I mentioned. Now first, to make sure that it's protected, I'm going to put the turntable inside this rubber 4-inch plumbing cap, and then I will mount it down. And then basically it'll look like this, and the whole thing will turn, the end cap and everything, on top of a post. That's a pretty primitive explanation, but I will be back with details later to clarify. Okay, I got the cap mounted in place. I'll give you a look underneath. The cap will protect the turntable from the rain. It'll go old and probably rust anyway eventually, but I try to make it last as long as I can. I'm thinking about putting a nut and a bolt here and on the other side, and simply bolting those two open holes right directly to the rubber disc to give it more strength. I'm not too concerned about it right now, so I'll do that at another time. Right now I got the challenge of figuring out how I'm going to get these wires to go through this and come up through the center. And that's my next challenge. But anyway, if you look at it like this, you can get an idea of what it will look like. I'm trying to balance it here with one hand on the camera, but it should pivot without any trouble at all on top of the post that I'm going to sit it on top of. And I will be back with more updates. Okay, I had to resolder the blocking diode, so I'll show you what I did here. The wires come from the motor, go through the rubber cap here, come out on the inside. The negative wire, you can see, goes around and comes up through the center. This is the positive wire. I wanted to put a piece of heat shrink tube around the outside of it, and I do have some, but I just can't find it. It's around here someplace, and I'm not going to go buy any more just for a 3-inch piece of it. So I will use some electrical tape to cover this to make sure that it's not going to ground out on anything. And then I'm going to feed that underneath and screw it all together, and I will be back in a moment. Okay, I got it covered in electrical tape, so it should be well protected from grounds, short circuits, and things like that. And I'll be back. Okay, I got some more done since the last video segment here, and I'm going to bring you up to speed. Okay, I ran into a problem. The prop broke, so I wrapped a couple of zip ties around the crack. It seems to be holding together pretty well, but I can get a replacement prop at a later time. I must have banged it around when I was working on it. But what I did is I went underneath. Now ignore the wires for a moment. You see a screw there, and you see one over here. That's just to screw the turntable to this rubber cap and give it some stability. And also the rubber cap had gotten bent out of shape a little bit when I mounted it to the wooden vane itself. And by putting those nuts and bolts in there, it brought it back to its original shape, because it was kind of bent like a taco shell. So the next thing I did was went to a local surplus place, Axeman Surplus, and I bought an audio jack, and I wrapped some electrical tape and some zip ties on there to give it some support. That was an absolute tedious nightmare to solder that, but the reason I did this is because the whole entire thing, rubber cap and all, will spin on top of a post that I will show you in the next segment, and I don't really want the positive and negative wires here to twist inside the post. So to prevent that, I used this audio jack. Let's see if I can get a good shot of that, holding this in my lap here. I don't have anyone to hold the camera for me at the moment. But the wires will not twist. Instead, they'll just spin. And I'll still have positive and negative feed going down to the battery. Now my concern in the long haul is that the wire could burn up, because they're different gauges of wire. This is a nice heavy duty wire, and this is just thin speaker wire. So You know, I don't know how it's going to work out in the long run, but we'll just have to wait and see. I can always change in the future. I refuse to spend a lot of money on this project because it's not providing that much of a service for me. All it's doing is providing enough electricity to keep the battery from sulfating. I want to keep the battery, you know, topped off and active. It's good to keep the battery active to keep a charge going in it, and this will provide a trickle charge, and that's all it's doing. If this was a more substantial component to the overall project, I would invest more money and, you know, have it properly installed. But this is just a hobby motor, and it'll provide a trickle charge to my battery and help keep it topped off, and that's all I want it to do. But the slip rings can be expensive, so that's why I'm going with this this makeshift audio jack setup that you see here. And the idea behind that, again, is to keep the wires from twisting around. Okay, I got this landscape timber at Home Depot for like $3.50, something like that. I really wasn't looking for this. I just stumbled on it, and I thought it'd be a good idea. The price was right, so I'm going to use this for my wind generator tower. Now the problem here in the long run is that it's not very tall. It's only 8 feet tall, so I might have to mount the post on something to get it higher up off the ground, or I might have to switch to a different post altogether. But for now, I'm going to go with it. What I'm going to do is drill a hole down the center of the post with this drill bit that I bought yesterday. It's extra long, so it should, you know, go down quite a ways. And then I'm going to mount a disc on top of that, so that the turntable that's underneath this cap will have something to screw in. I can't screw it in directly because the holes are actually overhanging the edges of the wood. So I'm going to go outside in the garage and drill this where it won't make as much of a mess. And then I'll be back. Okay, I'm out in the garage, and I finished drilling the hole. I wish I could tell you I had a really fun time drilling that out, but I didn't. But I got it drilled as deep as I could, and then I widened it out a little bit around the edges with a Dremel tool and a sanding drum, just to make it easier to feed wires and things into it. And then I drilled this hole right here. Now you notice that it goes upward at an angle. That's so when the rain comes, it'll run down the side and rain won't go up into the hole. So that's why I drilled it at the angle that you see. So what I'm going to do is set the camera down for a second. I don't have anyone to help me with it right at the moment. And I'm going to set the wind generator on top of it, and it's sitting right over there on top of the trash can. I'm going to set it up there just so I can get a look at how it fits and everything, and then, you know, for the first time we'll have a look at it and how it'll actually look when it's sitting up there. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm just holding, it's not actually screwed in place, but I just got it sitting up there. I'll stand on this chair so I can get a closer look. This is basically what it's going to look like when it's done. But I got some mounting to do up in there. It's not mounted down, it's just sitting up there, but you get an idea. So it'll spin around there freely without any problems. Of course, I will oil the ball bearings. And yeah, you can see it's not mounted on there, but you get the idea. It freely spins, no problem. So I'm going to head over to the hardware store and get some wire, solder some wire in there so that I can run the wire out through the side hole here and down, plug it into the battery. Probably run it through a hole in the wall in the tiny house and plug it directly into the battery bank. But yeah, it's coming along pretty good so far. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take this rat's nest of wire, untangle it, and I'm going to run it through the hole in the end and out the side. Then I'm going to solder it to the wires on the bottom of the wind generator. And I'll be back when that's done. Okay, at the last second I decided to do something different. When I ran the wires in through the hole on the end, I realized I didn't really like them being on the outside of the post. Now I'd like for this whole thing to be hollow, but they don't make a drill bit that long, obviously, so I drilled as deep as I could. Ran the wires out through the side. And I don't want them really exposed on the outside so much. So I took my Dremel tool and I added a router attachment to it. Something I've had for years. Put a little bit in there, quarter inch bit. I took it outside and I routed a notch all the way down the length of the board so I can tuck the wires inside, and then I'll put a staple over them to hold them in place. But now I'm going to feed the wires in through the top and out the side with that hole right there. And I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I got the wires fed through. And I'm ready to move along. Okay, rather than use staples, I decided to use some zip ties that I had laying around. I put them in there every 7 inches or so. Tuck the wire into the notch. And that should be good for now. There's probably a lot of better ways I could do it, but for now that's fine. I can always change it in the future if I want to. I did a project similar to this years ago, and I used staples to hold the wires into the notch, but they rusted and then they'd pop out, and I just wasn't too happy with it, so I think I'll just go with this for now. But I'll be back in a Okay, you can see that the hole's a little off center. The drill bit in the center of the hole saw grabbed and pulled in at a position I didn't really want it to go in at, but it doesn't really matter. I don't think it's going to make any difference. Alright, I've got the wind generator mounted to the top of the post. I was unable to use the nuts and the bolts that I had bought for this. They would have gone up in here. Hard to see up in there. I know there's not a lot of good light down here. But I didn't have enough room to get a wrench up in there and screwdrivers and things. It was just too tedious. I probably could have done it, but it wouldn't have been worth the effort. So what I did is I took the nuts and bolts out and I simply attached the wind generator to the post with zip ties. They're strong zip ties and they should be just fine. So that part of it is finished. Now when I put it together, I ran the wire down the post, and somewhere inside here it connects by way of the audio jack, and that runs down and out here. So I twisted the wire up a little bit and put some zip ties around it to hold it in place, because if this wire gets tugged on, then the audio jack will come disconnected and I'll have to take the entire wind generator off the top of the post to reconnect it, and that's going to be a lot of problems. So I just wrapped it here with some zip ties to keep that from happening. Eventually I think I'm going to cut the zip ties and seal the wires in that slot with something that's a little more secure, but for the moment I'm going to leave it be. And I'll be back soon with another segment. Okay, what I've done is taken the whole wind generator assembly outside and I've clamped it to the deck rail that you can see there. And what I notice is that it only takes the slightest breeze to make the entire assembly spin around the top of the post. So that works great. I'm really happy with that. It is still connected to the audio jack inside, so I know that there's current flowing through the wires. So everything's good there, but I've noticed that it takes a pretty good wind speed to get the propeller to spin. I'm not too happy about that. Now, as I mentioned in a previous segment, the propeller's broken. I actually got a zip tie wrapped around it to hold it together, and that's holding fine for now, but I'm going to have to change that. So I might just invest in a larger propeller to see if it'll catch the wind at lower speeds, because I'd like to be able to generate wind at lower wind speed. But for the moment, I got it out there. Now, it's not connected to the electricity or anything. It's not connected to the battery. But I just got it up there just to monitor and see how it works in the wind. And so far, so good. Got a little propeller activity there. So it works. It's working great. I'm pretty happy with it, but I really would like to be able to generate electricity at lower wind speeds. It looks, in the video, it looks like it's kind of a flutter effect on the propeller, but I'm looking at it directly over the camera, and it's actually spinning much faster than it appears in the video. So, but on to the next segment. Okay, I have an interesting development here. Before I had this all assembled, I had ordered a slip ring from a guy in China who was selling it on eBay. I emailed the guy and I asked him if the slip ring he was selling would work with the 12-volt system, and he didn't answer me, so I went ahead and ordered the slip ring anyway, and about 2 days after I placed the order, he contacts me to tell me that the slip ring that I bought will not work with the 12-volt system. So it was kind of too late, but that was okay. I figured I could take a look at the slip ring, take it apart, see how it works. So I went ahead and assembled this with the audio jack that you saw in a previous part of this video. And then today, the slip ring I ordered arrived in the mail. And it looks pretty good. It seems to work pretty well. And I wondered, why wouldn't this work with a 12-volt system? So I connected it to the positive and negative wires you see over here on the floor. And I connected it to my voltmeter. And I spun the propeller with my fingers, and it works. It works fine with a 12-volt system. So I'm not sure what the guy was talking about or what he thought I was talking about when I emailed him, but at any rate, I'm going to disassemble this. I'm going to cut the zip ties that are in there with a pocket knife, and I'm going to connect this slip ring because this is going to give me better long-term performance than the audio jack. So I'll be back as I proceed with this part of the video. I trimmed off the extra plastic around the edge here because it wouldn't fit down in the hole. I tried to sand out the hole to allow room for the slip ring, but the Dremel tool I was using is broken. So I just went this route. Okay, I got another update for you. I'm here in my basement again. I'm watching The Expendables Part 2. I gotta tell you, that is some silly shit too. Pretty stupid. But anyway, I'm not watching that show very closely. I'm working on my wind generator again. What I did was I cut the zip ties. You can see them laying all over the floor. And I replaced them with these metal fasteners. Now I have found that zip ties are really wonderful tools to help construct something like this, but very seldom, if ever, do I use them in a permanent location or in a permanent way. Now I did do that up under here because I couldn't, as I explained in a previous segment, because I couldn't reach up in there with the pliers and screwdriver and whatnot. It was just too much trouble, so I zip tied it, and that should be fine because it'll be underneath the cover, the rubber cap, to protect it from the rain and whatnot. I'm not worried about that. That should be fine. But down here I wanted something a little more permanent, and I cut the zip ties. I never really planned on using them long term, really. So at any rate, I replaced them with these. You can see them here. This one's a little crooked, but the rest of them, they all went in nice and straight. And there's enough room underneath there that I can take the wire out. I can actually feed it through one at a time. Be a little tedious, but it shouldn't be too much trouble. Now, down here at the end, I took the excess and I covered it with heat shrink tube. I had like, I don't know, 10, 12 pieces of it. Bought a box of it at a thrift, at a surplus place, Axeman Surplus. And I put it on there and I just heat shrink it, heated it with a hair dryer. So that's all good. Now I'm going to move forward with the final segment of this. I'll be back in a second. I have to go into my room and get something I forgot to bring out. But I'm going to show how I'm going to connect the positive and negative wires to the battery pack, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay. I went in the bedroom. Now I'm watching The Man with the Iron Fists. Man, this looks like some real silly shit, even worse than The Expendables. Okay, but at any rate, I went into my bedroom, went through my junk there. I don't have a workshop or anything where I live. And I got these. These are known as Anderson connectors, or in this case, they're specifically Anderson pole connectors. And when I first got these things, I assembled them myself and soldered the wires into place. Now I have them twisted together. Normally I would solder them and then cover them with a heat shrink tube, which I will do in time, but I'm not going to do that now because when I get the tiny house done, I'll have to drill a hole through the wall or run it into a window. However I'm going to do it, I'm not going to permanently connect these until the tiny house is done and I have everything in place. So that's why I just got them twisted together for now. Now these slide together. I'm going to set the camera down here, see if I can do this. I don't know how well you can see that, but they slide together. Now to keep them from coming apart, you may notice a little hole down the middle. I'm going to put this bolt in there. And that'll keep them from sliding apart. I hope that worked out good. Now what I'm going to do is show you how this works. If you need to get some Anderson connectors, if you're interested in doing something like this, just Google Anderson connectors or go to eBay, which is what I did. Or no, actually I didn't get these at eBay. Can't remember where I got them. Somebody had them online and I got them. They were like $6, but Anderson connectors all over eBay. Not hard to find. So what you can do is open up the side of your Duracell battery pack and you can slide the Anderson connectors in. Now in this case, they fit very tight, which I'm not too happy about, so I'm going to sand the Anderson connectors down with some sandpaper to make them fit better. But at any rate, you get the idea. So the wires run down, positive, negative, and they go right into the Duracell 600. So I'm going to take this whole thing outside and connect it, and then I'm going to be done with this video until the tiny house is complete, in which case I will probably blog the entire experience, and I will cover the segment where I install the wind generator. So I'll be back in a minute. I'm going to take this outside and set. Alright, I got it outside here. I got it clamped on the deck like I did in the previous segment. It is a little windy out here, but the wind is coming from all different directions, so I was not getting in enough wind from any one direction to start the propeller up. It hasn't yet anyway. But it doesn't take much of a gust to make it spin around on top of the post, and I'm happy about that. So yeah, I got it connected. Just follow the wire in, where it plugs into the side of my battery pack. Now, on the odd chance that it overcharges, because I'm not using a controller with one generator, as I explained before, there's a small chance that it could overcharge on a really windy day. So in that case, I have plugged in this alarm. I got this on eBay. If it overcharges, it goes over like 14 volts or something like that. It see, it says low or high. It will sound an alarm, and then I know to get up and simply unplug the Anderson connectors and unplug the wind generator. So I'm going to call this video complete, and the next segment I will be installing it on the tiny house, and that will be a ways from now. It's going to be a while before I'm there, so that's about all I have to show you for the moment. I wish the propeller would spin, but the wind is erratic and coming from different directions right now, and it's just not getting enough to fire up the propeller. I actually thought about taking the wind generator and mounting it down inside the post and have the propeller on top so it would catch wind from any direction. That's a design I might experiment with at a later time, but right now I'm just going to leave this be, and I'm going to call this complete. So this will be the last segment in the tiny house wind generator video. And I will see you back later with another review or another project. Now, like I said in the previous segment, it doesn't look like it's spinning very fast in the video, but as I sit here and watch it over the camera, it's actually spinning quite fast until it stopped. So I've been watching it operate outside just to see how it would work and see if there's anything I could do to improve the performance. And I've got some ideas, but like I said, this is really the last segment. I won't be doing any updates for a while, so I'll see you again when the next project rolls around.